So curtain lights are pretty incredible, but they all suffer from one design flaw that many people have no idea what a dramatic difference it would make when corrected. In today's video, I'll go to extreme measures to show you just how epic curtain lights can potentially be if manufacturers are able to take my advice and come up with a solution. Now I have here the Govee Curtain Lights Pro with a total of 960 LEDs, but the design flaw is something that you'll see no matter what curtain lights you buy. The first thing you'll notice when you set them up is that the bottom of the curtains don't have enough weight, so they all hang at different and crooked directions, which doesn't look the greatest when lit. So my first idea is to fix this. I took a trim piece from my local hardware store and put a couple 3M sticky pads and attached it to the wall right where the bottom lights should go if each line were fully extended. Then I took some clear clips with a sticky backing that I found on Amazon and proceeded to straighten out all 30 of the individual strands and lock them in place. This is going to ensure that every strand ends at approximately the same spot and that there's no crooked strings that will take away from the lighting effect. So once this is done, you can see how much nicer this makes it look aesthetically during the day when you eliminate the slop at the bottom. But just like I feared, when I turned the lights on, this made a very minimal difference in what's actually the biggest issue. Because even though all of our strands are stretched out and aligned, the lights still look incredibly crooked and it looks like the spacing between each strand is way off. I'll go through a few different animations so you can see what I'm talking about. And this is something that I'm sure many people have noticed, but I also guess there's probably a ton of people that wouldn't even necessarily pick up on this. So what is the actual issue? Well, the problem is that each of these curtain strands are impossible to straighten out and twist in a way that every single LED bead is facing outward in the same direction. What this means is that some lights will be facing directly at the wall, some will be facing at the wall but at an angle, and some will be pointing outward. And this is what causes the curtains to look crooked and what takes away from the potential that these have. This matrix effect is probably the best at highlighting how bad it actually is, because each of the animations is actually traveling down the same string that it starts on, but because the LEDs are all pointing in different directions, there's a significant amount of left to right movement instead of straight down like it should be. Now with that, my first idea to see if it provided any improvement was officially a bust, so I had to move on to more drastic measures. My next plan brought me back to the hardware store where I found this 1/16 of an inch plastic type wall panel that I thought might do the trick. So I brought it home and got to work cutting it down to size to fit behind the curtains. Now the entire idea behind this step is to not completely destroy my wall with what I'm planning on doing. Once I cut out the first section, I'll be using my brad nailer to secure this to the sheetrock. And for this, I'm making sure to not hit any studs, because if and when I take this all down, it's super easy to remove the nails when it's just gone through the drywall only. The other reason I love the brad nails is because the holes they make are so small that one coat of paint will fill them in and I don't need to do any additional patchwork to make the wall look as good as new. Now my next idea was to use some double-sided carpet tape, start at the top of strand number 1 and put it behind the lights going all the way down to the bottom. Then I highly recommend using a laser level to stick the lights to the tape to ensure that every single LED is pointing outwards and that the strand is going straight down. Moving in closer, you can see how this plays out with our first piece and how using a level will ensure that we have a perfect end result. And again, without the green laser, so you can see what we're trying to accomplish. What proceeded from here is what I can only describe as the painstaking process of repeating what I just did another 29 times to ensure that all 960 LEDs are not only secure, but making sure they're all facing the same outward direction. And I'll always be the first to say that I've never really been book smart, but if there are a couple areas I think I do excel in, it has to be patience and persistence. This is very evident in my trial and error type approach I take on pretty much all my projects. Because while a lot of people will say you should spend more time up front to come up with a better plan, which isn't bad advice by any means, I usually just jump right in, and if things don't work out, I'm okay with starting over, because even when you fail, you're always learning something. So by the time I was done, it was about 2 in the morning, I was tired, and I headed up to bed. Well, fast forward to morning, and speaking of failing, I came down and the strands had already begun to separate from the tape. This was pretty discouraging to say the least, but I moved on to plan C, which was to try using some super glue, which I thought might be slightly less messy than hot glue. Well, surprise, surprise, I was wrong again, because A, it was incredibly messy, and B, the super glue turned out to be a horrible idea because whatever material these curtains are made out of just didn't really want to stick to anything. I now found myself sadly moving on to plan D, and for this I decided to go back to the tape because even though the lights didn't want to stick very well, the tape was still very much sticky. I cut some small sections off from the carpet roll that I used earlier and placed that between every light, and finally I think we might have a winner with this tape on tape action. But the thought of doing this 960 times made me instead use some regular masking tape to see if that would speed up the process and have the same results, so that's what I did for the rest of the lights. Now after this step, it was finally time to take the new and improved curtain lights for a test drive, and it's literally a night and day difference on how much better it looks after what I just went through. I'll go back to the matrix example, and if you remember, this is what it looks like when the curtains are installed like normal, and then this is what it looks like now. But doing this does have some unfortunate consequences, because I don't think I'll ever be able to enjoy curtain lights again unless I do this with every one of them, because now the original way really just looks sloppy. So my challenge to any manufacturer out there that wants to instantly become a hero is to design some high density curtain lights that when installed are somehow able to lay perfectly flat and have all the LEDs face in the same outward direction to achieve results like you're seeing now. And as far as the method that I just went over in this video, I'm 100% sure there's better ways of going about this, and I would love to hear anyone's idea on how they would do this, preferably without destroying the wall. Well, that about does it for this one, but make sure to check out my Will It WLED video I did on how easy it is to convert this Govee Curtain Light Pro kit to WLED. I'll leave you with some awesome final results, but thank you all for watching, and as always, I hope you have a blessed day.